I think, Tom, what we've seen from the Labor's Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Penny Wong, in her op-ed yesterday in 9 newspapers, is that we are entering a new phase in relations with China. And I think this is a bipartisan view across all of the party, across the major parties. I think there is a general acceptance that this is now the case. I think Ambassador Cheng's comments to the Australian Financial Review are extraordinary, and I don't think they should be taken lightly. And I think it's hard to read them as anything but a threat that if Australia continues to push for an independent inquiry into the origins of this coronavirus, then the economic consequences that will be brought against us will be dire. But Labor supports having an inquiry. The purpose of an inquiry is not to apportion blame or to assign blame. The purpose of having the inquiry is to have a proper and detailed understanding of how this coronavirus came about, and really to put policies in place around the world, not just here, but around the world, so that we don't have a pandemic like this again. Because remember, the SARS pandemic and MERS as well, so 2003, 2013 approximately, we've seen these coronaviruses before. We don't want to see them again. And I think having an inquiry is a way forward.
Well, given the importance of that, you're saying you back the government's firm stance on pushing for the inquiry. If that does mean there's some sort of financial, economic boycott, call it whatever you will, from China, Labor will still back the approach and not blame the government for the economic impact on Australia?
Look, I think that if the terms of the inquiry are such that it's really about understanding how this happened, coming up with some, actually understanding the evidence that is brought before such an inquiry, then I think that we do want to get to the truth. We do want to know whether it was the live animal markets. How did the severe cases of pneumonia that were seen in December last year, the 41 cases at Wuhan General Hospital, why was there a delay at that point in terms of informing people? And we know that really this is not a time to have a propaganda push from the Chinese embassy and from the Chinese Foreign Affairs Service, which we have seen in other parts of the world. I mean, the Chinese embassy in France blamed French nurses. This is not the time to do that. The time at the moment, and if you want to be a good global citizen, the time is now to have an understanding of how this pandemic came about, how this coronavirus started.
And if pushing for that answer, Senator, from Australia does result in some sort of economic punishment, if you like, from China, fair enough, you won't then blame the government?
Well, I think this is a bipartisan, there's bipartisan support for it. So I think that as long as there is an understanding around the terms of reference, I actually don't think anyone in the Australian Parliament wants to blame any particular individual. I think what we want to do is get to the bottom of how this happened, and to have some information. In fact, Ambassador Cheng yesterday said he had some doubts about whether it did start in the wildlife markets. Yes. And if he has some doubt, then surely he himself would like to know with some certainty about how this virus started. So I think it suits all parties to have this kind of inquiry and, to work together, to cooperate together, to have an understanding on this. And I don't think that there's anything to be feared from that.
Xi Jinping told Australian Parliament back in 2014 the two countries should be friends in good times and in bad. It's not playing out that way, is it?
Well, it's not. And I think that, we are entering a new phase. I think that, there's obviously been ebbs and flows in the relationship for some time. I think that we do need to ascertain, and really not the releasing of sanitised timelines, for example, as the embassy did a week or so ago, is actually not helpful. And I say sanitised because it avoided all mention of, for example, Dr. Li Wenliang, who was the ophthalmologist who on a private chat group with his colleagues sort of said, well, look, I'm seeing this severe pneumonia, these cases of severe pneumonia in the hospital. Maybe this is another kind of coronavirus. That was left out of that timeline. But actually what we need now, because no one wants to go through this again. So what we need now is we need some openness and transparency. And I think that it behoves the Chinese Communist Party to participate in this kind of inquiry.